All right, guys, we are here live with Travis Walker of Travis Walker Law are you down in Stewart?
Main office in Stewart. We got one in Fort Pierce and a satellite office in Tallahassee.
All right, they're everywhere. That's all you really need to know. If you're in Florida, they're everywhere. And I've got all this information up in the comments. You can go check him out. Amazing guy. And, we really did a lot of work to get him into our networking group here. We finally got him in, and now it's absolutely just wonderful having you in here. I, in a short period of time, have just built such a great relationship with you. You're a phenomenal guy. I love your family, and you're just a giver, man. And that's what we like in this community. So I appreciate it.
Well, I appreciate you, and I know that you're a veteran, and we appreciate your service and everything that you do, and the way you lead the networking group is fantastic. I've been a part of, networking groups. I've been practicing 14 years, and before then, been involved with networking groups, and nobody takes the reins like you do. So the success of the networking group has a lot to do with the hard work that you've been putting into it and holding us accountable when we need to be.
Well, I sincerely appreciate that. I'm kind of a wimp now that I'm out of the Army. I got to, because I'm a realtor, right? So you're trying to love everybody up. So when people are late, they don't show up. I got to beat them up a little bit, and I feel bad, but you got to do it. It's not for them. It's for everybody else. But you're right.
No, yeah. Hold them accountable. And if somebody's not pulling their rucksack on a long run, you got to hold them accountable.
Let's go. That's right. That's right. So I want to talk to you today. I've got so many connections with really a lot of business people, but realtors specifically. Yeah. And it's always the question of, well, hopefully it's the question, if they've even gotten that far, of do I stay a sole proprietor? What is a sole proprietor? Or do I go LLC, S-Corp, C-Corp? Now, before this, you said, so I'm making this up. Did you say LP?
I said a limited partnership. There's
I don't even know what that is.
Yeah. Yep. Those are out there as well. And so, yeah, there's a number of different, opportunities out there and entities, and, trying to figure out what is the best fit for you is always a little bit of a challenge. And, it's definitely something that, we work on a day-to-day basis. But it just depends upon how, what fits that interest. But I mean, it's, you talk about sole proprietorships, and I think the biggest distinction and difference, we'll start digging into it, is that, from a business association standpoint, and there's obviously a specific law school classes on this issue, but the biggest difference from a legal perspective is the sole proprietorship versus any of the other business entities. And the biggest issue there is because it's a sole proprietorship, you have no real liability shield. And so, if you have no liability shield, then, you're going to have issues with regards to, premises liability. You're going to have potential issues with lenders if they don't get a personal guarantee. I mean, there's a lot of caveats that go into it, because even if you have a corporation or you have an LLC, if you sign a loan with a lender and then they require a personal guarantee, that liability shield is gone already with regards to that lender. But there are certain liabilities that are shielded by having any of those other business entities as opposed to the sole proprietorship.
So here's a question I've never thought of, honestly, and I've never done this, so I don't know. If I go in with, thinking about the shield and the protections, and from the lender's point of view, I don't even know if you know the answer to this, but is it going to be more challenging for me to get a loan as not a sole proprietor versus being a sole proprietor? Because as the lender, you can go after me if I'm a sole proprietor, but if I'm not, I've got protection. Is it tougher to get a loan?
Well, I mean, I don't know if it's tougher to get a loan if your business hasn't been in existence for, a qualified time, and they're going to look at your credit score often anyways. But, one of the negotiation issues that if you own a corporation or you own an LLC or any of the business entities is whether or not you want to have that personal guarantee on there. And that's if you have a lease, that if you have, a lender or anything else like that, you want to the purpose of having that business entity and paying those filing fees and getting it set up is to make sure that you have that liability shield. And the more that you allow lenders or anyone else to encroach upon that, that's they're in. And so one of the pieces of advice I often give people is, if you have these business associations, try and leverage that, and not just give up that personal guarantee. They're going to ask for it because they want you on the hook, but they don't necessarily, because the entity is in of itself a party to a contract. So it works that way.
So let's just start looking at sole proprietors versus what I consider to be the easiest, the LLC. What is an LLC, and what are the one or two things, like the biggest things that, oh my, that's pretty nice, it protects me from? And what are the one or two things where I might think I'm protected, but I'm not?
Well, the biggest thing is between, like I said, the sole proprietorship and the LLC is is having that liability shield, and so making sure that you have that liability shield is huge, and because everything should be named in the corporate in the LLC's name as opposed to in your name personally, so that the biggest thing again is the liability shield. Now the LLC gives more flexibility. If we're going to go down the rabbit hole a little bit, the LLC gives a little bit of it has more flexibility than say an S corporation or a C corporation or a limited partnership, because you can add as many members as you want, and the organizational structure is easier. But you use a Schedule C from an accounting perspective for your sole proprietorship. You do, and you use the same exact type of thing as an LLC, unless you make a certain different type of election. But if you file an LLC, that LLC is going to be treated as a Schedule C for accounting purposes, plus that additional liability shield that we were talking about.
Okay, so now I just moved from an LLC to an S-Corp. What's the difference between those two? Let's just talk protection. Are the protections exactly the same?
Yeah, I mean, the protections are largely the same. I mean, because
Through it all.
the intent is to through it all. Yeah, I mean, the intent is to create something where there's going to be protection. Now, the LLC probably has a little less protection than maybe an S corporation, just from case law and everything else that's out there. But the intent is to do it, to still have that liability shield. That's why they call it a limited liability company. That's what an LLC stands for.
Yeah.
It's to limit the liability of the company. But there's a little, the other issue with regards to liability, going down the rabbit hole a little bit more, is that the members, if members are starting to bind each other in the LLC, there's going to be less of a liability than the organizational structure that there is usually in like a corporation. So in a corporation, you usually have officers and directors. Like the board of directors is the owners of the corporate, or the ones who make the policy of the corporation. And
This
the
is an
officers,
LLC or a corporation?
we're talking about a corporation now, but
Okay.
is generally just members, and the members are the ones who own the LLC. And then you have managing members and limited members. And so the managing member is the one who has the authority to make decisions on behalf of the LLC, but in the S corporation, it's the officers.
Okay, I got you. And all of these in ownership positions or no?
Yeah, they're all owned. So like in a corporation, the owners are the shareholders, and in the LLC, the owners are the members. And instead of in the LLC, it's considered units typically, or member shares, units typically, or in a corporation, it's considered shareholders.
I got you. Okay. So here's one big question I've had, and well, I'll just ask the question. Let's say I'm a sole proprietor, right? So I don't have any of those protections.
Yep.
And I'll say it like this, some sort of retirement fund, and I get sued. Can you come after me for my retirement fund?
No, I mean, the retirement, and this is one of the big things, and you and I know we listen to a lot of coaching and everything else like that, and Tony Robbins and Money Mastering the Game and on these different things talks about the importance of putting money into retirement regardless of what's going on, because retirement accounts, IRAs, those types of things are typically judgment proof. And so when you pull money out of those 401ks and everything, then you're making it accessible for someone to get that liability attached to it. But once it's in that 401k, the government wants to encourage people to put money away for retirement. And so those types of retirement accounts, whether they're IRAs or 401ks or other retirement accounts, which I suggest talking to a financial advisor about, those are all judgment proof. And so they can't come after those. If you file for bankruptcy, they're not going to be able to attach their interest into those. It's so as a sole proprietor, that's you don't have the personal liability, but once that money goes into a 401k or retirement account, it's protected. It's just another reason why you don't pull money out of retirement accounts besides all the other penalties that occur.
Yeah. So let me just make sure I understand this correctly. Let's say I've got $100,000 in a Roth IRA between my wife and I.
Yes.
And I get sued for something. Well, let's not say I get sued. Let's say my business goes belly up, right? And I go bankrupt. That money stays in there?
That money stays in that 401k.
This is blowing my mind.
Yeah. So, I mean, it's and that's why it's so important to sock money away and to not pull that money, because, that money is protected. That money doesn't hit that. Well, I think it's a 10% penalty, and then you get taxed on it and everything else. If you reach those ages. But, the purpose is to create some type of vehicle where you can retire And at the same time, I think from a public policy standpoint, they want people to take chances while at the same time saving for retirement. So you shouldn't have to feel like your entire life is on the hook if you have money saved away for retirement as well, just to take some risks and start your own business.
Yeah. We got a comment here from Peter Hopkins. So I'm going to throw this up. Hopefully you can see it. Says, ask him about piercing the veil. How can that be better set up from the outset?
Sure. No, the piercing the veil is an important issue and that's we were talking about a little bit with the sole proprietorship, where I started to go into it with the rabbit hole. But the piercing the veil is an important thing, because the one caveat, the one exemption to having this personal liability with your business association, whether it's an S-Corp or an LLC or an LLP or anything else like that, is that you can't there is an opportunity for a judgment debtor or a judgment creditor, to pierce what they call the corporate veil. And so piercing the corporate veil is basically getting through that business association, the S-Corp, and attaching personal liability. So the most important thing to do is don't treat your corporation or your LLC or your LP as your own personal banking account.
Yes.
Don't run your personal stuff as much as possible through your business. Sometimes you can't help a little bit of it, and that's fine. But if you basically run your business, if you run your personal accounts, and you're paying the babysitter, you're paying for movies out with your wife, you're paying for dog food for the dog, and everything else under the sun through your business, you're just asking for that corporate veil to be pierced. But the way that the law views it is that you aren't really a separate entity. They want to see you personally being separate from the business entity, and then when you're one and the same, it pierces that corporate veil. And so that is the one caveat, and that's important to remember. And I think Peter brought up a good point, because that's that is the one caveat, and the one thing you do have to be careful of. That, and before I forget, is that if you do become a corporation or an LLC, you need to make your S election before, I think it's about 3 months or so. You have to make it within a very quick period of time. And
getting the LLC set up.
Well, no, this is for IRS. So I'm going down the rabbit hole.
Okay.
S corporation. So if you set up if you set up an LLC, or if you set up a corporation, and you want to be an S chapter corporation as a C chapter corporation, that S chapter election needs to be made within a very close period of time. I think it's like a 2259 or something form. So IRS, basically, if you don't file that form, you're going to be considered a C corporation as opposed to an S corporation. And so that's another important thing to remember. But that's either one of those corporations is going to have that what we call a corporate veil. But just don't, and under no circumstances, run your business as if you and there's no way to separate you as the person from you as the.
Yeah, that's a great point. So legally, because I know, like you said, hey, sometimes it's a little bit difficult, and I know I've done it 2-3 times before, and every time I'm like, what are we? It's always been an accident. I look back at it and I'm like, oh my gosh. So I go to court. You're my guy. What is the defining, what is the line? What's the black and white line where they're like, Joe, you're out of luck, or Joe, we can see where you're coming from, you're okay?
It's on a case-by-case basis. And one of the great things about the law is that usually it's not a lot of black and white. Sometimes we work in the gray area, and the gray area becomes like how much of this business entity is really just Travis Walker. So is Travis Walker Inc. and Travis Walker, or Joe Rosen Show and Joe Rosen, are they two separate entities, or are they one and the same? And so the court will go on like a fact-finding mission. If it is a jury, and then if it is a bench trial, then the judge determines the issues of fact. If it's not, it's the jury. But the issues of fact is whether or not that business entity is being operated, separately than that person's own.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I imagine a lot of it has to do with intent. How many times have you done it?
Exactly.
Yeah. Okay. Interesting. Okay. All right. I feel a little more comfortable.
Did you pick up a roll of paper towels on the way home and forget to use your personal card?
That was yeah. I mean, that wasn't exactly it, but that was almost exactly what happened. Yeah.
Hypothetically, if there are paper towels, that would be what you would do.
If there were paper towels, yeah, then I'd be piling them on, because who knows when you're going to get them. Yeah.
Exactly.
Although my wife did tell me she went in the other day and we actually got some paper towels. So now we're good.
so
Thank
fun.
you. Thank you. That's the big win for the week. Who cares how many houses I close on, as long as I got paper towels and toilet paper.
Truck.
So I've done a lot of investing in my past,
Sure.
and we used to always put homes that we purchased into individual trusts.
Sure.
Tell me why I would do that, or tell me I'm crazy. What do you think about that?
I mean, it's really just how complicated do you want to make your life, and how much liability do you want to diversify,
Yeah.
So like, I mean, so if you put two houses in the same, trust, or the same LLC, or the same entity, then, one house is going to be on the line if both houses will be on the line if the LLC falls apart.
Yep.
If you separate, you set up an entity for each individual one, you're going to have to file different things separately. But you're going to have each one separate own LLC. We do some tax deed surplus work, and one of the funny things is that we'll have like Tarpon 1, Tarpon 2, Tarpon 3, Tarpon 4, Tarpon 5. So that's how a lot of guys run their real estate business. They put each parcel into a separate entity for that same exact reason, and just because it's an LLC, ultimately your accounting is going to be probably pretty easy. It's going to be Schedule C stuff, unless you make that S election. But if you have those separate entities, then it's just if they're in S corporations, or if they're in a partnership agreement or something like that, then you have different issues.
Interesting. So we were doing it solely for liability purposes. We thought if something happens and we get sued on property A, we don't want that impact property B, C, D, E. So we had a system. We put them all in different trusts. And you're right. It was a little bit of a pain in the butt until you get a system down. And it's there's more accounting there, but I don't know. That's how do you think it's worth it or not worth it?
Well, it just depends. I mean, we all have our own different things that we're good at, the things that we're not so good at, right? And so have going back to Tony Robbins again, if you have someone who is the entrepreneur, and you have someone who's the manager, and you have someone who's the artist, you have someone who's able to manage if you're the entrepreneur and you're the one coming out with great ideas and everything else like that, but you can't manage a company to save your life, the chairs are falling apart, the place looks like a wreck, then obviously maybe you put everything into one entity, because you just don't have the organizational capability to do it. But if you have that manager in place to help support you, or if you are that manager, then you that's what you do. So I mean, it just depends upon where you're at, and what is your risk tolerance, right? Because that's the whole other thing is I mean, how worried are you? How afraid are you of someone slipping and falling on your sidewalk, or the renter suing you for not, living up to the terms of the lease or something like that? Those are all, what if questions, and it just depends upon your tolerance for risk, man.
Yeah. So now I think this is a good mindset for me to be in, but if I wasn't in the mindset of anytime I see law, legal, lawyer, attorney, anything like that, I just say, Travis Walker. If I was better at this, are there specific things you do within law, or do you just want them all? Do you want all the referrals?
All the referrals for law?
Anything legal?
Well, I mean, we pride ourselves on being concierge level service. I have 4 attorneys plus myself who works in the law firm. I'm all about building relationships and adding more value. And so if someone has a question, I mean, we don't practice tax law, we don't practice criminal law, we don't practice immigration law. We don't want to be an expert on all things. One of the attorneys we have is the real estate guy. We have a business lawyer, we have a estates and probate lawyer, and we have a divorce / child custody adoption lawyer and everything.
You do?
Yep.
Yeah.
And each one kind of has their own specialization, and I oversee everything. But the reality is that if someone comes to me and says, "Hey, Travis, I got an immigration issue. I'm trying to get a visa or something like that," I know who to send them to, or who I trust. Same thing with a criminal lawyer or something. I know who I would trust to put that person in line with. So I definitely appreciate the opportunity to do referrals for people, because I love adding value for people's lives.
Yeah. Well, hey, I just want to thank you for coming on. This is such a huge topic for a lot of the people that are in my little circle here. And everybody's interested in this stuff. Everybody's always trying to improve on their businesses. And this is one of those things that, I've probably been exposed to this idea 25, 30, 35 times. And every time I have this conversation, I'm still learning a lot. It's such a cool, it's broad. There's a lot to it.
Yep.
And there are so many different aspects that we didn't even talk about. I mean, we talked about 2% of it, but it's really good stuff. So I sincerely appreciate it. And again, I can't tell you how much I appreciate just having the relationship with you and having you in our group.
No, man, it's great. Yeah, it's an inch wide and a mile deep issue. And, when I started off as an attorney, I started closing houses, 13, 14 years ago or so. And, the amount of things that have changed, the amount of learning you do through the whole process. I mean, that's all it's, that's a huge part of it.
Hey, I got one more question here.
Sure.
I don't know if I'm going to fully understand this. Can you explain about PA?
Sure. So like a PA is considered typically a professional association. So
Okay.
like say, for instance, the law offices of Travis R. Walker, PA,
Yeah.
We're TravisWalkerLaw.com. The law offices of Travis R. Walker, PA, that's a professional association. That's a corporation. That's an S corporation. So that's my firm is a professional association. Typically, that's rendered for people who, want to have, a professional corporation. Now, there's really not a designation in Florida, especially about the difference between a corporation and a professional association corporation. But, it's kind of like, lawyers, like I can be Travis R. Walker or I can be Travis R. Walker Esquire. Right. So, I mean, you can in the trade name can be Law Offices of Travis Walker. The proper name is the Law Offices of Travis R. Walker, PA. Theoretically, it could be the Law Offices of Travis R. Walker, Inc., or the Law Offices of Travis R. Walker. But so there's not really a distinction and difference, especially here in Florida. My accountant just treats me just like the guy who sells widgets down the road. So it works out pretty well.
Crazy. Okay. I've always wondered that too, but I've always been so busy. I'm just like, I don't know. I'll figure that out next time I talk to Travis. So I'm glad he brought that up. That was perfect. So here in Florida, you would say for me, it doesn't really hold a lot of water.
No, I mean it's more of like it's all a lot of things in the world are titles, and I don't think that there's a whole lot of difference between being a PA and being a it's or a corporate, saying Inc. or Corp or something like that. As long as you have that name properly titled, and if you're using a trade name, you omit it, you're fine. It's just a vernacular.
Awesome. Well, thanks again, my man. Sincerely, I appreciate it.
Well, I'm grateful. I'm like super honored. Thank you for bringing me into the podcast world. I'm grateful, super grateful for both the opportunity to do this as well as the value you bring to me in the networking group. And I've talked to you about living in Minnesota for a few years, and you got that huge part of the Midwest that those people bring. And so you represent it well, man.
Yeah, I appreciate that. Thank you so much. Well, you got a ton of knowledge, so I'll beg you to come on here in another couple months, and we'll come up with another great topic.
Always looking to add value with you, Joe.
All right. Thanks, my friend. You have a great night.
Thanks, man. You too.
All right. Bye now.
All right, bye.